Hey there, what's up, everyone? I'm Maxwell Haddad. This is the first ever video here at the Ember Productions YouTube channel, the brand new channel that is a partnership between myself and Amber Coates, the M and the Burr. We're going to be talking about movies, theme parks, and Broadway. Um, Movie came out this weekend that you've probably heard of called The Batman, and I decided that I absolutely had to talk about this movie. Now, it's pretty interesting what has happened to me with this movie. Um, there have been times in the past where I see a movie and I don't like it, and I'll rewatch it down the line, and my opinion has changed on it. That's pretty much what happened here. I was really excited for this movie. I have been anticipating it pretty much since it was first announced. I'm a big fan of the director Matt Reeves. When they said that Robert Pattinson was going to be playing Batman, I thought that was a great choice because if you've seen films like The Lighthouse or Good Time or The Lost City of Z, it is clear that he is so much more than just that guy from Twilight that so many people think he is. And with every additional piece of information, Zoe Kravitz, Colin Farrell, Paul Dano, Michael Giacchino doing the score, Greg Fraser as a cinematographer. On paper, this movie seemed like a dream. So when I sat down in my Dolby Cinema on Thursday to see this movie, my anticipation was sky high. Maybe that's a problem. Maybe I need to work on not getting so excited for things. But after the 3 hours of the movie, uh, and it came to a close on Thursday, I didn't like it all that much. I had some real problems with it, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. A big credit of that probably goes to Michael Giacchino. His score for this movie is incredible, and I'll get into all of the things I do love about this movie as we talk about it more. But I couldn't stop thinking about this movie, and so I decided to see it again earlier today. And although I do still have issues with it, it's not a perfect movie. It's not my favorite Batman movie. I think it's a damn good movie. And I think it's a movie that I'm going to see again and again, and my appreciation for it is only going to grow. Before we get into what it is that I love about this movie, I do want to talk about those issues. Um, there's a couple of things that really bothered me the first time I watched it, and there's still issues I have with it, but they're not as problematic or as prevalent as I thought. Um, it's a long movie. It's 3 hours. I am not one of those people who inherently thinks that a long movie is bad. That being said, ultimately, a movie can feel incredibly long or incredibly short, regardless of its running time, because of the pace. And this is not an action-packed movie like a typical comic book or superhero movie is. There is action, but this is a deliberately paced movie. And when I saw it on Thursday, and it's entirely possible that it was after a work day, I was tired, it felt really, really long to me. When I saw it today for the second time, it moved a lot quicker. The pacing is not quite as shoddy as I thought it was. There are moments that could be trimmed, particularly towards the end. One of the other problems I have is that it falls victim to Return of the King syndrome, wherein there is a few too many little epilogue-esque endings after the climactic scene happens. Some of them I really like. Some of them I think go on too long. Some of them I don't think are necessary. And speaking of the climax, there's been a lot of talk about the climax. As I said, this is not an action-packed movie, but the climax is a more traditional comic book movie, over-the-top action climax. I don't hate it, but tonally there is a bit of a harsh juxtaposition to everything that came prior to it. It's well shot, it's thrilling. There's a couple choices that, and I'm not going into too many spoilers here, but so I'm not going to say specifically what my issues are, but there are some things that are a little questionable about it. The other big problem I had with it, um, and again, in my second viewing today, all of a sudden I didn't have quite the same problem. It's a really serious movie. There are moments, and I felt more strongly about this than I do now, where I felt the movie took itself so seriously that it almost bordered on self-parody. I kept thinking back to the Lego Batman movie where there's all these really funny jokes about how Batman is brooding and dark and gritty. This is a dark movie. There is humor. The humor is organic and natural in the characters. It's not the typical quippy, riffy humor that we see in a lot of blockbusters. It's more natural. But this is a very dark, serious movie. That all being said, I want to talk about what it is that I do love and why I've really come around on this movie. And there's 5 areas that I'm going to point out. The first is the aesthetic. This movie is gorgeous. From Greg Fraser's cinematography, the shot selection, and the lighting, to the set design and decoration, even the costumes, stunning to look at. There's a gothic quality to it, intermingled with this sort of gritty 70s crime drama feel. Every frame of this movie is gorgeous to look at, all of which is complemented by what I think is the single greatest aspect of this movie and the element that I already mentioned that I think really pushes it over the top, Michael Giacchino's score. Giacchino is one of the great composers we have working. This may be, if not the one of the 3 or 4 best scores he's ever composed. It is incredible. The themes he's written for the characters of Batman, Catwoman, and Riddler in particular are incredible, and I think are gonna permeate pop culture consciousness for a long time to come. One of the things I love about the aesthetic of this movie is Gotham. The way it's designed feels a little bit heightened, but it still feels like a real functional city. It feels lived in, it has purpose. And that brings me to my next area I really want to talk about. That is the world building. In this movie, Gotham feels like a character. And I'm not just talking about all of the different personalities and people that exist in there, which we will get to, but the city itself feels real in so much as this is a comic book movie. The geography of it, the design of it, the way it functions, the corruption within it, it's really a thrilling portrayal of Gotham. Obviously, Tim Burton had his gothic over the top Gotham. Joel Schumacher did what he did. I think in the Nolan Batman movies, the Gotham was not as important to the design of it, particularly because it changed so drastically between Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. But this is an incredible Gotham. And as I said, it is populated with just an incredible array of personalities and characters, which brings me to the next area I want to talk about, performance. This movie is filled with some really terrific performances. At the forefront, we have Robert Pattinson as Batman and Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman. I know there was a lot of internet consternation when it was announced that R. Pats was cast in this role because there are still some people who just see him as Twilight. But as I said, I think he's an incredible actor, and I think his work here as Batman is incredible. What's so interesting about this movie is this is a Batman movie. Bruce Wayne is not nearly as prevalent, and the Bruce Wayne that we see in this movie is not the Bruce Wayne that we're used to seeing in other Batman movies. He is not the rich playboy going out and sleeping with women and spending money. He is a recluse. He is still dealing with grief. He is still figuring out his place in the world. So we see Robert in the cowl and the cape far more than we see him as Bruce Wayne. He brings an intensity, a rage, an anger, a solemnness to it that is really impressive. Um, his Batman in this is the most detective forward we've ever seen a Batman in a live action Batman movie. And I thought he commands the screen. And then Zoe Kravitz is every bit as equal. Her Selena Kyle is sultry and alluring and intelligent and badass. And the two of them together have incredible, scintillating chemistry. When the two of them are on screen together, this movie soars. Another character that has great chemistry with Batman and is a highlight of this movie is Jeffrey Wright as Gordon. Um, Gordon is always a part of a Batman movie. We've seen him as commissioner, we've seen him as a detective. To me, this might be the best relationship between a Gordon and a Batman that we've ever seen in a live action Batman movie. They truly feel like partners working together to solve the case of this movie. Jeffrey Wright is a stalwart, solid actor, and he brings gravitas and a little bit of humor to this role. And much like Pattinson and Kravitz have great chemistry, Pattinson and Jeffrey Wright have great chemistry too. Watching them at crime scenes or talking through the case is a joy, and I look forward to seeing how their relationship develops in further films because there's definitely going to be further films. A couple other people we have to talk about in particular. Colin Farrell as the Penguin is like lightning in a bottle. He is utterly unrecognizable. This is some of the most impressive prosthetic makeup I've ever seen. He is operating at this over the top, joyous, thrilling level, and he's just a joy to watch. And I think we're going to see more of him in future installments, and I can't wait. But the main villain of this movie is the Riddler. Paul Dano uh, is at times brilliant and at times makes some choices that I'm still thinking about a little bit. When he is in his costume, when he is committing his crimes, he is chilling. He is scary. The intensity he brings to it, there are moments of this movie that almost feel like a horror movie. Once he's unmasked later in the film, he makes a couple choices that are a little bit broad, but I get what he's going for, and I think on the whole, it's a really, really solid performance. Um, I mentioned that it's scary, which brings me to the next point I want to talk about, the genre and the tone. The tone of this Batman movie is unlike any that we've seen. Chris Nolan did what he did, Tim Burton did what he did. There's been a lot of different Batman movies. This one truly feels like a serial killer crime thriller. The DNA of David Fincher is prevalent. This feels very much akin to Seven or Zodiac. In fact, the costume that the Riddler wears is very much like what the Zodiac killer wore. There's also a lot of 70s crime drama in there. There's the conversation. There's all these little interesting nods to these films because this is a crime epic. This is 3 hours long, and there are all these moving pieces, all of these players. And as you watch it unfold, it's fascinating to see Batman and Gordon work together to figure out why people are doing what they're doing, how it all fits together. Um, it's a superhero movie. There are action scenes, there are moments that make you want to pump your fist, but it functions far more in a genre outside of what we typically see. And I love this movie for that. I think it is so cool to place these characters in this type of movie because this is what has happened in the comic books. This feels a lot at times like the animated series. This detective forward crime Batman is what I've always wanted to see in a live action Batman movie. And that's partly also why I was so excited for this movie because when you listened to the director, Matt Reeves, talk about his approach, he was always very clear that this was going to be Batman as a detective. This was going to be a crime drama, and he delivers on that. Um, this all brings me to my final thing I want to talk about, the impact and the approach. I mentioned how in this movie we get a lot more Batman than we do Bruce Wayne. And I think one of the most fascinating things about this movie is how Bruce throughout the film wrestles with his impact and place as Batman in Gotham as a society. What is the impact that he is having on impressionable children, on people committing crime, on corruption? In this movie, as is always the case in the world of Batman, Gotham is a deeply corrupt place. This is not a true deconstruction of superheroes like something like Watchmen is, but the way that he consciously wrestles with his own impact and identity and shifts and changes throughout the film and how it ends up is really, really thoughtful and impressive to watch. Another aspect I love that sort of ties into all of this that makes this movie really feel like a noir, particularly in the opening 15 minutes, which maybe the strongest 15 minutes of the movie, is it uses voiceover very much like a classic noir film. I love that. The entire approach to the Bruce Wayne Batman character in this movie is what really makes it great, and Robert Pattinson sells it every step of the way. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the Batman. I'm so glad I gave it another shot because although I do still have issues with it, I've really come around to really liking, if not loving, this movie. I cannot get the score out of my head. There are images from the movie that are sort of burned in my eyelids. I can't wait to see it for a third time because it's a dense movie. It's 3 hours long. Does it earn those 3 hours? Yes and no. But it's a movie that I'm going to keep coming back to. I am very excited to see where this Gotham and this Batman goes next because this is only year 2 for this Batman. He is still early on uh, in his tenure as a vigilante. So I'm really, really excited to see what happens next because you know there's going to be a sequel. There's always got to be a sequel. Let me know what you thought of the Batman in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to Ember Productions here on YouTube if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching. We are going to have so much more great content for you here at this channel. We will see you next time. Have an amazing day. All of our love.